thank you to all of our panellists for being here. And thank you for tuning in to the Great Decking Debate. I'm going to start by having everyone go around quickly and just introduce yourself and what it is you do. Should we start with Karl?
Hi, my name's Karl Harrison. Lots of people know me. I run the Decking Network, and I also design and build decking structures in more than one composite and timber material. And I've recently contributed to writing the 15-year code of practice for the Association of Professional Landscapers.
Yeah, Lee Heitzman. So I'm the sales manager for Arbor Forest Products, looking after the Trex side of things.
I'm Chris. I'm the commercial manager at Sage Decking.
Perfectly. Last but not least.
I'm Stefan. I'm the technical product manager at Millboard. I work a lot on the sort of technical side, but also get involved in new product development and a bit on sort of help out where I can on installation.
So I thought we could kick off by going around and hearing from each of you how you feel the decking market is performing at the moment and how it's been impacted by COVID.
As a designer builder, I haven't really been affected in terms of supply. I can't comment on manufacturing because I don't manufacture. I'm almost considered an end user of multiple products across a whole range of applications. And so you can almost, for that question, treat me as a landscaper, if you like. Okay. And I can say that I haven't seen any hiccups in the supply chain, and I've always been able to get delivered to site from representatives on the board for their products and other products.
Fantastic. Lee?
I think it's been a really difficult year like no other really, Rachel, is the honest answer. I mean, we obviously sit across not just the decking category, but a multitude of products that are used outside in landscaping. So structural carcassing, softwood decking, fencing, sleepers and light. It'd be really hard to put a number on kind of how the market has grown, because I think the reality is we have to honestly say that the demand has been outstripped by supply. So we're constantly in a kind of back order scenario where merchants are ordering it and they're having to wait for that stock to arrive. But if we had to kind of guess, I'd say it's probably somewhere between kind of 50% and 75% growth year on year across those products. With composite as our business, I think the growth has just been far greater because we've not just got that R&R kind of situation that we've had that COVID's created, but you know, market share and kind of the growth that's coming naturally through the product sector as well.
Perfect. Chris or Stefan, did you want to add anything to
that?
No,
I think I can only sort of second what Lee said there. Really, just wow, what a year! Like, I can't believe that, you know, so many other industries have been affected by COVID. And someone said to me, I don't necessarily agree with, but someone said to me that it's COVID proof. Our industry, you know, it's been extremely busy. You know, we haven't taken a breath. It's November, and I know that's the same for our competitors and other people in the industry. It's still extremely busy going into November. We're finding, yeah, the supply chain has been a struggle, but people's need and desires to update their gardens with all materials has been, you know, unbelievable. And composites really taking some serious traction this year, whereas all of us guys, we live, breathe and sleep composite, but it's other people have really sort of started to see it as a mainstream material to work with this year, including from the big boys like Millboard and Trex down to the smaller companies like ourselves, where you know, it's been more readily available.
Yeah, and from our point of view, yes, it has improved massively due to the home improvement sector increasing, and which would, yeah, mainly be the domestic sector. But yeah, from ourselves, we have massives in stock and have done before COVID. So yeah, thankfully, we have always managed to keep up with the demand, thankfully, and yeah, still we have lots in stock. So, but yeah, I think it still will improve with improvements increasing.
Would you say that, I guess, Karl, you probably do have quite a big understanding, but consumer-wise, do you think they have an understanding of composite decking, and do you think this is going to be affected as people are thinking more about the environment?
I don't think the environment is a consideration in the same token as COVID. COVID has brought about a massive resurgence in the DIY markets, and I'm not suggesting that as a race to the bottom when landscapers are quoting for works being undercut by people saying, do you know what, I'm working from home, I'll do it myself. Yes, the DIY market has increased, but I'm not so sure that I'm getting the feedback that it is due to environmental concerns. It's purely because people have got a lot more time on their hands. And I don't want to say this in a derogatory way, but decking is sometimes considered as the lowest common denominator. It's a cheap product and it's a cheap thing and I can do it myself. I totally disagree with that sentiment. It's a very DIY. It's only decking, I'll DIY it. You know, we need to shift that. Decking is a professional outfit. These products are pretty flipping streamlined. They're high end, they've got massive warranties, they look amazing, they last for ages, they're fit for purpose. Composite decking isn't what it used to be. We need to tell the public this. It's all very well us in these almost closed groups between contractors and between suppliers, you know, and we can all pat each other on the back and go, yeah, we do a great job with our products are great. However, I'm the guy that has to convince the client that composite decking is a really, really sensible way forward.
I'd agree with that, Karl. I think the biggest kind of danger to all of us manufacturers or suppliers in the, you know, involved in this debate, and not just debate, but in the wider sector, is your product is only good as the way it's fitted. And, you know, unfortunately, the internet's brilliant for a lot of things, but what it's not great for is when someone's fitted a product wrong, they're not very good at putting their hands up and saying, actually, I've made a mistake here. But they're very good at putting it all over social media and other bits and bobs, saying this product's terrible. And it's not just, you know, the installation plays a big part of that. And as Karl, you know, really put it quite well, the product is only as good as the way it's been fitted. And it kind of almost de-skills and devalues what Karl, as a representing the contractor side, does. You know, it's not just a DIY product.
I definitely agree there as well. If people have had a timber decking product before and they've had bad experiences with that, they will definitely understand the benefits of composite over timber. But yeah, the sort of issues we get with installation is generally it's a DIY install. Obviously, professionals want to do it right for pride for their company and pride for their work, really. But yeah, in terms of sort of whether it will change with the sort of environmental factor, yes, I mean, it is definitely a sort of consideration. But yeah, that would be, as Karl said, that would be apart from COVID.
And what are some of the most common mistakes that are seen?
From my point of view, it's down to the installation, where people don't necessarily read the documentation. I think that we've all got our own USPs, but we're much of a muchness in the sense of how it's installed. And we all pride ourselves on our paperwork and our installation guides. However, people say, oh yeah, I've done this before, and they don't necessarily look at the added couple of mils where they should be taking those expansion and contraction parts into account. And also, as said, it's for me, it's where people have always said, I've done this before and I know exactly what I'm doing, and I've done one, I've done them all. And they're normally very good carpenters, and they're normally trained to get things very very tight. However, with composite, and I think that echoes what the guys were already saying about the understanding of the material, this isn't titanium, no matter how good our products are. And so we've all got our own USPs and reasons for our manufacturing. However, the understanding of how these materials are actually made is actually really different. And the way that they're installed, it's just very, very simple basics that people on site, no matter when you give them an installation guide, they'll say, yeah, I've read it, but they haven't. And we do find that you get that from DIYers all the way up to, you know, big contractors.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Chris and what he said there about, well, I fitted a deck, so therefore I fitted them all. I'm a master carpenter. I've been doing it for 20 years. Because I've fitted millboard, I know all about Trex. And because I've fitted Trex, I appreciate Sage and so forth and so on. And that is just whilst I agree with Chris, it's a mile away from the message that I think the whole of the industry should be saying. I mean, for me, I want to enforce a code of practice. I would like a set of incredibly stringent standards. And I think hopefully we'll come on to it later about what the panel think about their own installation guides, which are lovely, but I think by our own individual volition, they tend to get ignored because somebody's fitted Trex, therefore they understand millboard. How about that there is some kind of sign-off? So if you want the manufacturers boasting a warranty of 25 years, if you want that, you've got to pay a little bit of extra money and have it actually certified by a professional. So as part of the pro installers, or you could use the APL, you could use the PGCA, there are lots of bodies out there that you could have a couple of dozen trained experts across the UK, not just Sage installers with the Sage brand, but they are trained by everybody. And they would then get charged out to certify DIY as deckers. And you could say there are two stages, the groundworks and the carcassing. That includes what timber they're using, dimensions, calculations, and the timber connection, and also the complete job to make sure they've got it spaced, to make sure they've got that 5, 10, 15, 20 mil gap for expansion at the end. Make sure there's 1 in 80 degrees runoff. There's lots and lots of things that could be done to offer the customer that DIY peace of mind that can also be brought in at the same effect on a commercial level. I've seen a number of dozens of commercial installations where the builder said, I'm not paying £300 a metre for that, I'll get my chippies to do it. And they did it in 3 days. And it looks lovely, but it's a pile of junk. It's the devil's in the detail, it's the underneath. They haven't put it together correctly, but the customer, well, it's a deck, and it's the lowest common denominator, and uncertified can lead to a horror story. And it's meetings like this where we should be able to all tick the same box and say, what standards are we striving for and how should we implement them across the board?
Yeah, I agree with Karl there that it is in the detail. We've had problems with install is when they've someone onto a timber subframe, but it wasn't a correct sort of grade classified of treatment of timber, and within 4 years it had rotted out. And they came back to us and said it's a problem with your board, but it's not a problem with millboard at all. It's a problem with the subframe they did, and we get it regularly where they've built a subframe and then realised they've cut the post too short, so they pack it up with some packers and further of timber on it, and then obviously your subframe is going to fail. It's doomed to fail, and you've paid all that money to put millboard on the top surface. But it's only going to last as long as the framework underneath.
Yeah, I think it's a really valid point, Stefan. I think one of the things obviously we understand with treatment, it's been the backbone of our business for 175 years. So you ask a landscaper, and take Karl out of the equation because Karl's a very educated landscaper. You take a generalist landscaper at any of the sort of daily trade shows that we do throughout the year, and you ask them how they know the wood that they're buying is fit for purpose. They generally say, well, it's green or it's C24 treated, which neither of which are really the answer, but they don't, their perception is the product is such. And I think the timber side of the industry has to have a big part to play in that as well. Every builder's merchant in the country is stocking a variant of C24 treated timber, but most of them know it's probably not fit to be used in ground contact. But if they're selling a waft of decking, whether that be softwood or millboard or Trex or Sage or whatever it might be, they're knowing that that's what it's being used for, but they're not re-advising the customer. They're just working on the assumption that the customer should know, but he doesn't know, but he's relying on the merchant to know. And I think the two parties have got to find a way of reaching a bit more parity and a bit more honesty about it.
It comes down to cost, though, doesn't it? It comes down to cost.
Yeah, it does, Chris. You're right. And the daft thing is, none of our products are particularly cheap compared to other, to timber decking. But why skimp on the bit that's more important? Your subframe's only, your deck's only going to be as good as your subframe, isn't it? So, people are now looking at other options like Plas-Pro or aluminium. They far outweigh the cost of getting a properly treated timber subframe done. So I don't always agree that it is just cost. I think sometimes it's ignorance and not understanding what the product is and what its capabilities are. I mean, I always joke when we do product training, we talk to some of our stocking merchants and ask how many tins of Entil they sell a year, you know, to retreat cut ends. And they look at you as if you're an alien. What's this product you're talking about? But every stick of C24 treated wood that goes out the yard is going to be cut. So it should be retreated on the end, but it's not being done. And
we definitely find that when we do quotes, etc., people say it makes sense to have an aluminium subframe. And I get that, and I fully understand. Even you can have the argument for a composite subframe, and whatever product goes on top of it, that makes sense. And then they say, "Oh, that price is 6 times higher than what I was expecting. It'll be fine on timber, won't it?" Well, not really. All of our boards, all of our products will outlast the subframe underneath it. And then there's like you were saying that when the product there's a problem with it, it's down to it's millboard, it's Trex, or it's Sage that its product has failed. It's not. It's the framework and the installation of that underneath has got to be just as good as what's on top. The lovely shiny decking is great, but like you said, in realism where people are jacking up bits, and that does happen, and in most occasions you can probably get away with it, but it doesn't always work like that.
I think you know, and Karl can kind of jump in on this, being an installer himself. But if you generally worked with a user class 4 treated timber that is certified for ground contact and retreated your cut ends, built your subframe properly out of the ground, airflow around it, you know, out of soil contact, all those kind of things, use the butyl tape to protect the top of the joist, I genuinely think that most timber subframes would last the same kind of lifespan as the decking product would. But the reality is 90% of the builders merchants in this country are stocking a user class 2 product, which is for internal use only. So there's a big difference, and they're not retreating cuttings. So that wood's going to last 5 or 10 years. That's it, you know, because it's not being done properly. There's a big difference between doing it right and doing kind of like you said, doing it for a price kind of thing. You know, that's a huge issue. I really can't agree more.
So at this point, I'd like to say, while we're all singing from the same hymn sheet, we're talking about the actual materials as a substructure, and we've touched on used class treated to level 4 in the ground. You know, some people put steels in the ground, some people put Plaspro, the 100 by 100 Plaspro in the ground, and all of that's wonderful. But it's a load of rubbish if you're using interior grade nuts and bolts and fixings. And there's a lot of people that screw Plaspro together, which in the summer, that's just going to fall apart. It's got to be nut and bolt. And if you're going to nut and bolt a piece of plastic, you've got to use stainless. And again, it's not just the structure, it's how is the structure fitted? Because, hey, I use user class 4 treated timber and it's still falling to bits because, yeah, I've been doing this 18 years, and some of the junk that I did when I first started, there was no regulations. I went to Jewson, I bought a box of fixings, and I thought that was great. These 6.3 millimeter nuts and bolts, they're going to be sound. But they failed 7 to 10 years outside because they're not stainless, they're coated, you know, and unless you get a massive warranty with some of these specialist fixings for outside that are coated in high carbon steel and whatnot, then, you know, you're kicking yourself in your backside again. So it's not just the correct structure, it's put together correctly and the timber connections that are used. And I think this all stems down to one general code of practice that says, don't care what decking you're building, this is how you build a structure. And it then gets modified to Trex's joist centers, to millboard joist centers, and to Sage's, and whoever's joist center is specified, but the structure is ultimately the same. You know, the post span, the beam span, the joist span, and all of the different sections that go into that calculation. The calculation, you say, well, but I'm a landscaper, what do I know about calculations? And it's that, you know, and not being derogatory to a landscaper, if they're given a set of span tables, it's dead simple to follow it. I'm using 150 by 47. I'm using that as a double beam. I can span X between my posts. So the beams need to be X meters apart, and my joists need to be X meters, or 400 or 300 or 500 centers, depending on what Trex is specified for, you know. And again, we're talking about individual components of a set of general regulations. And if we have this general regulation and we enforce that, then I think we're going to be doing all right.
So I guess you all would sort of support the introduction of maybe a formalised training qualification programme for deck construction industry in the UK.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I can't see why you wouldn't. And again, like you're saying, that without being derogatory to these guys, we can all start up a business tomorrow with a van and say it's, you know, Sage Landscaping. You don't need any qualifications. But, you know, it's the same as with all things. You want to pay dear, you'll get a proper job done. But then when it comes down to cost, and people say, yeah, this guy can do it cheaper. Well, there's a reason why he can do it cheaper, because he's not done this, this, and this. And like you're saying with the structure, Karl was saying with the structure, that all makes perfect sense. And why would you not do it? But then it comes down to money. It's just simple.
But if it comes down to having that warranty and having that job registered professionally, and they spend extra £100, couple of £100, and having somebody to certify that they build it to code, you know, and you go out, you do your inspection, you go, no, you haven't used the correct size fixings, you've used screws instead of, you know, M10 pairs of diametrically opposed nuts and bolts made out of 304 stainless. You know, your spans are all wrong. You didn't read your timber manual, you know, with all the spans in there that's available to anybody. And there is an association out there that promulgates all of these regulations, but it has very, very little to almost no membership. And it's not really targeted towards the end user. It is a sensible and professional organisation, but it doesn't have a very big mouth, and not a lot of people know that it exists. So there's still a lot more behind the scenes that can and should be done to promulgate professional decking installation, or at least certify DIY installation. Does anyone think that's a bad thing?
I think it's a really good idea, Karl. I'm just not sure how easy it is. It sounds really easy, but the reality is we've all got really good technical guides that are available for our websites. We've all got videos on YouTube platforms that are available for anyone to see on their smartphone. We can't get people to read them or view them or watch them or understand them. So, and almost we're inspecting a deck when it's kind of built, if you like, to see whether it passes the code. A bit too late then, because they're not going to rip it back up to change the subframe if it's not been installed correctly. So I think it's a wonderful idea, but I think the schematics of trying to pull the whole thing together could be a lot trickier than it feels, if you like.
Well,
we'd all love that. Don't get me wrong, we'd all love that because it makes everybody's job easier. So we're not.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying there, but as a member of the PGCA, there are more and more insurance claims where clients they're having Billy Bob a job, build them a deck, and they're taking action and they're using their insurance with their legal team. The legal team says, well, who the hell can inspect such a thing? They go to the PGCA, the Professional Garden Consultants Association. I represent them for timber construction. They then send me to have a look. Apart from holding my belly and chuckling at some Billy Bob a job, and it's stating the bleeding obvious sometimes with the multitude of I'm lost for words of some of the shocking states that I've seen decks in that have literally just been finished. And I think, you know, had that client been educated, they wouldn't have got themselves down that road. And I do think there could be something, there could be a statement made on every purchase by everybody that supplies decking. Are you a professional? Yes or no? No. Would you like your deck certified to uphold the warranty? Because it won't be warranted unless it's professionally installed.
Yeah.
And I think that will carry a lot of weight, and it will make us look, it will make the decking contribution to the construction industry a damn sight more professional in the domestic eyes.
Great. I'm going to move on to a different topic. I'm going to bring up the B word, Brexit. Do you think, with the UK leaving the EU, do you think it's time to sort of collectively generate, well, I guess we've kind of touched on this, our own product construction standards for decking, and also how do you think, you know, leaving the EU is going to affect us?
I think it personally would be, it would be good to have some standards for decking, because yeah, like I say, anyone could build a deck, and I mean, even people looking for decking, they say, to what standard have you tested your boards to? So anyone could come into UK and say, I've got this new decking, it's amazing, but it's not tested to a standard at all. So yeah, I think it would be definitely good to have a standard as to what the boards are, definitely.
If we're working to an old British standard, which might be a new British standard rather than a European standard or an American standard, or it'd be great to have some uniformity into the UK as to what everyone should be looking to achieve as kind of a minimum standard for definite. I think Brexit will throw up its own challenges. Who knows what it is? It still feels a bit like a unicorn if you ask really, Rachel. What does the trade deal look like? What's it going to mean for currency? What's it going to mean? Obviously, some are manufactured in the UK, some are manufactured Far East, some are manufactured in America. It's going to have a huge play on the way product is available, but I don't think anyone really knows the answer until we know what it looks like on paper, if I'm honest.
I can only echo what the guys are saying there, really. We've looked into our implications and we believe that we're covered, if that's a word, and we know what we're doing, but who knows what it's going to throw up. Definitely think a standard where we all test under the same testing would be useful, and then you can measure, from a sales perspective, you can measure against each other, because there are lots of brands out there where their testing is a bit obscure and you don't really know, and it all, you guys are very different to us, but we come under sort of the mainstream. You two being the bigger brands, we come under more of the mainstream, where our board looks the same as all others, whereas we know there's a significant difference in the strength and the quality. However, the unsuspecting person says, well, that looks like that one, so I'll buy that one, whereas we know ours is tested, it's got strength, it's, et cetera, in the product. But again, it comes down to, well, that one looks like your one, that's £10 and yours is £15, we'll take the £10 one. So
that one, yeah.
And do you think, and how do you think we could sort of improve the penetration of sort of UK made products? Is that a thing that's going to start becoming more popular over the years, do you think?
We personally would love to manufacture in the UK. Again, I hate to say it, it just comes down to the cost of us doing it. It just doesn't make it feasible. We'd be charging the likes of Millboard and Trex prices with not the product that they produce. That it's fair to say they're in a different league to us, and we accept that. But we would be charging extortionate prices for a relatively cheap product that people then would say, I'm going to buy it from Far East or China or whatever. So yeah, it's really tough. We would love to be able to bring it home and do it here. And I was hoping that with Brexit, it would encourage more UK manufacturing to happen. It's really where I believe I would love to see it happen, but it's down to the end user who says, I'm not prepared to pay for the UK price, if that makes sense.
From our perspective, yeah, we manufacture in the UK, and a lot of our the raw material in the product is UK made as well, which does help with our sustainability goals, with carbon footprint, with transport around the UK, etc. I mean, we do export to other countries, but for a UK consumer, yeah, definitely would be. It is beneficial to manufacture in the UK, because generally you find a UK customer wants to buy something that's made in their own country, generally.
And how important do you personally feel that branding is to these consumers and customers who are looking to pick decking products?
Massive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, massive for me. That if I can use Millboard and Trex as an example, and I hope they don't think I'm being derogatory in this terminology, but we always ask for sellotape, we always ask for a Hoover, but actually what we mean is sticky tape from Asda. And I find that Trex and Millboard are what people ask for because of their branding, because of their marketing, etc., that they do. People will always ask for that, and they're not always aware that there are other composite products out there that are available other than those two, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, obviously having worked quite closely with Trex for a number of years now, and understanding, their business model from stateside, home patch for them. It's branding in America for Trex is huge. I mean, as quite rightly said, you know, you walk into anyone's kind of back garden and they've got a Trex deck. They haven't, they've got a deck, but it's a brand leader in, you know, globally. It's the largest decking brand in the world, so everybody kind of knows what it is and it's synonymous with that. And you know, in fairness to Millboard, before kind of composite decking really took off in this country, they've got a fantastic brand and they're the market leaders in the UK, and you know, to be admired in the way they do things. So I think it's a really important message, and you know, Chris kind of touched on this just a minute ago with what he said. I think there's some really good products in this category, and there's some not so good products that we all suffer as well. And I think hopefully the branding and the good work that everybody's doing will hopefully see that in 5 years we find some parity, and you know, we're all kind of working at a nice level. You know, and people are making a good choice based on good products, good service, good price, and not people that are just looking to get rich quick in the market while it's active.
I was just going to say definitely on branding. Obviously, when a landscaper goes to site, they can say, "I will install Millboard for you." And when the person comes to sell on their house, they can say, "Look, I've got a deck at the back. It's not just a deck; it's a Millboard deck, etc." So that can, branding is definitely key, because it can help people when they come to sell houses. We've seen it a lot on, so if you go to Rightmove particulars, you can see Millboard listing as a branding as such on the particulars.
Stefan, just a quick question for you. Do you guys, something Trex do in America, we've copied it here, but I guess you do too. Do you allow the homeowners to transfer the warranty?
Transfer the warranty, yeah.
Yeah, you do, yeah. So if they sell the house and they've only had it 10 years, they can transfer the warranty with the sale of the house. Do you allow that? So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's, like, you know, you touched on it. It's a really great point, because it kind of it's another selling point, isn't it? It's another great thing to say, you know. You're not looking to hide away from it, are you, as a business?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And Karl, you can sort of touch on your preferences here a little bit. Would you recommend composite decking over, you know, hardwood, softwood, that sort of thing?
Definitely recommend it over hardwood because of the sustainability. And irrespective of what is in the composite, where it's from or how it's made, it's got a warranty, whereas hardwood hasn't. Hardwood is synonymous with the marine environment and longevity and durability, which is true, but when you can only fell the trees for 3 months in the Amazon rainforest, and it takes 3 months to get them to the UK, the cost is phenomenal, and that outstrips the performance that you get from that. The carbon footprint is massive, and it's not cracked up to what it used to be. When there was nothing else to compare to premium exotic hardwoods, well then, yeah, great, it was the market leader. But I think it's been many years since I've been asked to install an Ipe deck. Kamaru is the market leader in terms of exotic hardwood, because most architects have Kamaru on their lips, and they specify it more so than anything in ridiculous dimensions, lengths, homogeneous color, quarter sawn. These specifications are really from Made-Upistan. You can't specify hardwood in those categories anymore. However, if you specify sage, guess what? You know exactly what color you're going to get, what length it comes into, and you can have 1 million square meters. It's all the same stuff. Same with Trex, and the same with Millboard. And so, in terms of which is the best, composite is the best compared to hardwood. And if you haven't got any money, it's got to be softwood. But there's one thing that hasn't been mentioned so far, and that's modified timber. And I think it would be a fair comment to say, what are the because I'm not a manufacturer, I'm a designer builder. So if the other guys on the panel could comment on what they think of what is the modified timber market in terms of decking doing to the composite market.
Just one thing, Karl, before I come on to that, if you don't mind. I think the other thing it does give Rachel, and why we feel it's a really good choice, is because people have just got no time anymore, have they? I mean, we've become, you think of, I don't want to went back in the day, but you think of your grandparents, they repaired things. When things broke, they went in their shed and they fixed them. That was what they did. But we've become kind of a throwaway culture, haven't we, almost? You know, I kind of joke with this the other day, but even people's relationships. You know, if they hit some rocky patches, it's like, well, stop that, we'll move on, we'll start a new one again. Your grandparents were together for like 80 years, weren't they? It was just it's just a cultural thing, I think. So, and the one thing we're all doing is we're working much longer hours, we're busier, you know, the evolution of the working life, emails in the evening, all that kind of stuff. We just haven't got time. So you know, a composite deck, you know, whether that be Trex, Sage, Millboard, whatever it might be, it just gives you that time back where you haven't got to stain it, treat it. You can just enjoy that. That's giving you a bit of a quality of life back. But yeah, Karl, sorry to touch back on your point.
No, that's brilliant.
I think it's a fantastic product. You know, thermal wood, lunar wood, thermically treated, those kind of products. But,
no. Modified wood. Oh,
sorry.
Modified wood.
Right.
Not thermo wood that you shouldn't use for decking. That's bad.
Oh, that is a modification in some way, isn't it?
Well, it is modified wood, and these aren't swear words like lignia, Kebony, and Accoya. They're the three. Yeah. They're the three big hitters.
Yeah, I think, you know, like anything, it's just there needs to be a demand for the product, and I personally don't see that. You know, let the other guys speak as well. Happy to, but I don't see that really eating to our market yet. I've not really seen too much. Maybe a little bit in the commercial sector, but certainly not in the residential. Because to go back on the last point, the branding is not there for it yet. People aren't really aware of it. What I am seeing, and I saw a really interesting project recently where someone was building a deck over a lake, and they'd used tricoya to sit on top of their joist work, and then they'd fitted composite on top of that at the other angle, and then was complaining that their boards were expanding because the tricoya was letting moisture gravel on top. And so I think people are starting to see these products as something they can use, but the application of it is all wrong. So it goes back onto this education thing again.
Yeah, from our point, I think why they would choose composite over timber. All the time it is in maintenance, so they don't want to have to bother. Sort of every year I had an architect who said he put decking in his back garden. It was actually hardwood decking, and within 6 months it had faded, and he said he didn't want that anymore. So he was looking at millboard, which is good, but it is the sort of ongoing maintenance really. But with the Kevin, etc., they would still fade as well, would they, Karl? Over time, and
those three products are made from the same substrate species of timber, radiata pine from New Zealand, and they're modified in their own different way. And they've all got massive warranties, 30 years for Kebony and 50 years respectively for the other two products, that's lignia and Accoya. Yes, you do need to maintain them, but they won't go rotten. They're quite clever products, and it was, and I think Lee's hit the nail on the head there. Their marketing is elsewhere with their products, and it's not necessarily in the decking market. So at least the marketing that the composite fraternity are doing is working, and it's working because you don't have to do very much maintenance. So that's my take on it. And you're right, it's commercially specified, but it's not specified in the domestic arena because people generally aren't asking for modified timbers. They're asking for composites.
No, but I think that with composites now it's become more mainstream, and people have, and it's more of a common word, a bit like I've said with hot tubs this year. The average person, whatever that may be to people, are now having hot tubs. Well, those were for the rich and famous previously. They were all having, you know, the average person now has got a hot tub, let alone the blow up ones. What about proper plumbed in ones? Because they're able to, you know, whether that's because they've got a bit of spare income this year or whatever it may be, but people are splashing out on those luxury items where composite was always regarded as a luxury item. No matter the brand, it was always quite a showcase to bring people into your garden to say, look at my decking, look how fabulous it is. So it's not to say that those products won't come down into the residential markets. It will just take time. You know, who would have thought we'd all be owning flat screen TVs as quickly as we do and as cheap as they are? So it will take time, no doubt. Again, someone will bring it into the market and it will really sort of change things. But you know, composite's taken a long time to get where it's got, and it's still not, you know, as easily available as we'd like it to be.
Hey, we've talked about warranties a few times. Do you think that there should be a sort of set standard for composite decking in place, or not?
For me, it's fairly simple. As long as you pay out on your warranty, if you need to, that's simple. If you want to offer 25 years or 20 years or 10 years, like what we do, as long as you stand by that and you fulfill it. What's difficult for me is when companies don't fulfill it, and it's been the company's fault. Again, we all, I would say, very clear that installation is the main problem with our products. But there will be occasions, I'm sure, where there are manufacturing issues. And as long as the companies and the company that we sit in today, I know that do that, but maybe why we're sat here and others aren't, because we have values and we've been going for the time we've been going. Maybe, as I said, others that have a warranty that doesn't actually cover you, and I believe it brings our industry down, and people then will look at it as a very negative point and say, yes, you do have a warranty, but are you going to pay out on it? Well, let's look at what occasion it didn't, and why you've had to go through that in the past. Let's look at why you've now chosen the product you've chosen.
So I was going to ask for some recommendations for, like, maybe just a couple top tips for laying boards for anyone who might be tuning in.
Yeah, follow manufacturer's instructions.
Oh, you took my thunder. Yeah, to me, man, not just that, but you know, the world's our oyster now through things like Instagram, those kind of things. Just design tips as well. I mean, I don't want to use the term, and I don't want to offend anybody here, but a boring rectangular deck isn't sexy, you know, and there's lots of ways that you can change that, you know, geometrically, whichever way you do, by orientation of boards and breaker boards, contrasting colours, that kind of stuff that can take the same deck and really make it pop and make it look really nice. Lots of, you know, there's lots of great groups, millboard installers, Trex installers, you know, all those kind of things where people can see designs and get some inspiration from it. So I think just do your homework a little bit. It's going to be a really expensive purchase. You know, it's probably your third biggest purchase behind your car, your house, your car. It's either your deck or your hot tub, one of the two type thing. So if you're going to spend that kind of money on it, then just really think about those kind of things first. You know, a lot of time we speak to kind of people and they think, oh yeah, I wish I'd have known that first. You know, kind of do your homework on it is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'd definitely echo what Lee said as well. To start with the design of it. If you have a look at some of the decks that are in America, some of the designs over there are absolutely phenomenal. It'd be good to see that sort of thing appearing over here, and all the nice sort of curves in them, etc.
We're starting to see it, Stefan. Wouldn't you agree? We're starting to see people get a little bit more daring with it, aren't we? You know, we've obviously got the ability to curve Trex with ovens and that sort of stuff. So we've got some installers that are doing that now. But I know from talking to the guys that have invested that money in the ovens, they're sort of saying at the start, it was like, you know, you'd say to a customer, I can put a curve in it. Like, no thanks. You know, I'm not sure about that. But I think they're becoming a little bit more fashionable, shall we say, or people are getting a bit more daring. And inlays, the inlays are great. I don't know if you guys saw that deck that was done in the US. I think the installer was called Hen House Deck, and they built a deck that looks like a guitar when you see it from above. So it's got lots of various different coloured inlays in it, so it actually looks like an electric guitar. It's a really good, stunning install. So you can push the boundaries if you're daring enough, I think. So. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, even like decks like the one behind me, sort of thing. That sort of design in your decking just adds so much more to the whole design of the garden, really. Yeah, tip. Obviously, we've got a full installation video on our website, which has got all our sort of top tips on. But yeah, I would say definitely it is so important, subframe, which is why we brought out the aluminium, the duospan aluminium subframe, for that sort of knowing that you've got the structural support underneath the boards, but also knowing that over time you're not going to get you're very limited chance of any sort of galvanic corrosion, but also the speed of install, because obviously the installers on here want to do a job as quick as possible, but to the nicest standard as possible, to know that nothing's going to come back and bite them.
The only thing I would say is, for me, is just to read the install guide. It's just such a 5-10 minutes of your life where you may think you're doing it, and why not pick up the phone to the manufacturers or the guys you purchased it from. Most of these people tend to have composite champions within their timber merchants, etc. If they bought it for a timber merchant, there's always someone who knows what they're doing. And most people are so quick to help and advise, because they know people aren't always au fait with all of the information out there, or it's conflicting, or it's different between the brands. You know, that 5-10 minutes of reading the guide, even though you've done it before, just look over it. We've all got videos, we've all got installation guides in various different formats, whatever's easiest for you to follow, and just spend 10 minutes and do it. It will save you a lot of pain and heartache if things go wrong in the future.
Fantastic. Well, I think we're sort of coming to an end here, so I'm going to go ahead and ask one final question. And I'm just going to ask you guys what you think, what decking innovations you think are kind of coming around the corner, and what are the main drivers for that. Karl, maybe you could touch on, you know, what you're seeing coming up more, or what you'd like to see, you know.
I'd like to see certification and regulations. That's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to see everybody not necessarily taking more pride in their deck construction, but doing things properly and building things to last and upholding warranty, so the client can go back to the installer if something's wrong, rather than keep blaming the manufacturer all the time, because the manufacturer's quite clearly right in 99% of cases, and it's the installation. So let's get that nailed. And let's get that right. And I think we can do that through the associations that are out there. The APL are leading the way. They've got their own 15-year code of practice, and I think that's great. But in terms of innovation, Lee was pretty quick off the mark there with his assumption about different colours, different banding, different styles, get some curves going on, get adventurous. And we're starting to see the Americanization of decking in the United Kingdom. Whether I like it or not, that's a different debate for a different day.
Tasting, isn't it, Karl? But yeah.
Let's take what I think about the current Americanization whoop of American yeehawism into decking. I like one color in straight lines. However, yeah, curved decking. If Ozzy Osbourne wants a guitar built in his garden, and he's got 50 to 100 grand, I'm your Huckleberry, you know. But most people haven't, and to keep it simple is to go with straight lines and then put patterns within the deck. It's really cool to have a rectilinear deck and then put some patterns inside that and line that with steel and create planters and that sort of thing. Innovation, millboard. Seem to be, are they leading the way? I don't know. They've got that new duo span, the aluminium with the HDPE Plas-Pro laid inside. It's good for big commercial decks. It's good for great big expanses of deck, but I'm not so sure it works for the very complex, small, average garden deck. So again, keep it simple, guys. Trex, if you want to curve it, and I can't say anything negative about anybody else's product. It's I think the innovation is the designer and the installer, and for me as an installer, I'd like to see the manufacturers shouting about individual design, individual installers, and using that as part of their publicity, and try and promote their decking through third-party endorsement, which is the installer, not necessarily the product.
Yeah.
Can I shut up now, please?
Karl, I agree with that. I think just on innovation, Rachel, I think all I would add to that is obviously Trex have always, in the wood plastic composite market, have always kind of been at the forefront of innovation. You haven't kind of made the category in effect in the late 80s, and the various variations of the board as we sort of have seen. But the launch of the enhanced models sort of 2 years ago, if you like now, really was their last bit of innovation. I don't think we've really seen the full extent of that yet, because 85% of the decks are still being made with timber in this country. Now we don't want to stop that because we machine quite a lot of that timber for our softwood sawmill, but I think it's made the journey from softwood into composite not as big as it perhaps was before with just the premium product. So I think there's that to come. I mean, they are already working on the next innovation. I can't really, unfortunately, share too much because it's locked away in secret boxes, as you can imagine. But you know, I think as the product and the market's ready, I think that will move on naturally again. But it's, yeah, I think it's going to keep molding on. But I think for the now, it's pushing that brand from our side, you know, trying to take that person on the journey that perhaps wouldn't have bought composite. They were going to buy timber, but we can probably bump them into the sector a little bit through that product. And exactly what Karl said for us, I think the next year is going to be more about working closer with our contractors and kind of giving them the power of the branding, if you like, behind it.
Yeah, from our Terrace house, we take innovation very sort of seriously. Through the first lockdown, we worked on the cladding, which has just been released soon, and so we're still trying to get that sort of out to market for the start of next year, basically. So that's what we're sort of concentrating on. But innovation really, for us outwards, it goes into sort of two sectors where you've got the design side and you've got the installation side. So design, what looks better as a design, and then installation, what is easier for the installer, if that makes sense. So what can we do to make things easier for the installer, so that all of our improved installers can do the job quicker.
What we've done as far as innovation goes is that I think that we try and listen to our customers. We let them tell us what they want to do. We'd love it if you could do this, and we'd love it if you could do that. Why don't you bring out this product? And that's where some of our products have come from in certainly the last 18 months with our fencing and balustrades. We're working on other things now, along with fire retardancy, but different brackets in order to make the decking not just a right or left angle, to be able to do a hex and an octagon shape, where some people want to be able to do that. And it sounds silly little interventions, but that little bracket that could be soon available can change the shape of your deck to make it a little bit different. And especially where these markets are, people are looking at these. We do find that people do follow the Joneses and go, oh, what's that decking over there? I want to make mine like that. Oh, I want to make it bigger or higher or whatever it may be. And so I think that's where our innovation comes from, is listening to our installers and our customers who say, what if and what could you do? Because we're a small, relatively small family-run business. We don't have to go through many hoops in order to make it work.
Well, I think that about wraps it up time-wise. Thank you so much to you all for being on the panel. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And thank you everyone for tuning in. I think now we're going to go and take some questions from the audience. Nearly there. Nearly ready. Well, I think we've gone live. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Great Decking Debate. I'm going to go and read out some of your questions now. I can see there's been loads in the chat, which is fantastic. I'll start off with someone asking, do you see supply catching up with demand in the next year? I've been advised that there is an even bigger shortage to come for wood products. So decking and fences.
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
From our point of view, yes, we see that there's an increase in supply now. But as myself and Lee were talking earlier about the ports and shipping, some of this is a global problem that is not just a decking problem, as far as the imports and exports of the world of construction products, including the aggregates, some sandstone, for instance, concrete. You know, it's all been very, very difficult this year. We know that our factories are still producing. It's whether the boats are sailing. We believe that we've got a contingency plan in place, and we've got more than enough stock that we would normally have, much more lower at this time of the year, but we're sat on a lot more stock than we would do, taking into account the problems that we've had over the year and what's potentially coming in next year.
Yeah, I think to answer it from a timber point of view, I know there's some questions about fencing on there. The global market is just so strong for timber at the moment, and unfortunately the UK, although prices are probably at the highest point they're ever at, they're still not paying the global rate that other imported countries are. So the only advice I could give is don't kind of expect to go to your builders merchants or timber merchants to be able to pick that stock up. If you know you've got a project coming up in January to use that product, I'd get your orders in the system now. Most are very good at running a back order system and being able to making sure you can satisfy your orders. But I certainly think by the time Easter comes around, dare we say, we might see a rebalance of where we are. But I think it could be tricky to start the year off.
From our point of view, as I mentioned, yeah, we still do have large amounts in stock. But yeah, been made aware that there is a shortage in timber. But yes, we have masses of the decking and also our duospan subframe in stock. With no sort of shortage in the foreseeable future.
Great. Someone else has asked, do you use any particular software to calculate the material needed for a decking?
On our website, we have what we call a decking calculator. However, we are also looking at other sort of calculation software tools. I mean, for myself, when I get a PDF drawing, I actually use a product called PDF Exchange Editor, which is a free software, and it allows you to take off the sort of square meterage and linear meterage, etc. It's very useful, that is, if any landscapes wanted to have a look at that.
Karl, just out of interest, what do you use from an installer's point of view?
Google SketchUp.
Sorry, Karl, say that.
I use Google SketchUp, and I take everything from first principles. I don't have a library of preset materials. One appreciates that a lot of materials are preset, and the Google 3D library does have a lot of materials from your manufacturers already in there as components. So you can export them into your drawings, and that can make it quite efficient from a designer's point of view. But there's nothing in there that will assist you in creating a decking frame, certainly not to any regulatory effect or EC5 or any tables promulgated by TRADA. So I take everything from first principles. Every deck's different.
Great. Somebody else has asked what the panel's view on using reclaimed hardwood timbers for decking is.
Well, I'll take this, as there's 3 composite manufacturers out there. I think you'd have to be careful with most hardwoods. Yes, reclaiming anything these days is a good idea. I would suggest that you need to make sure you've got all of your nails and screws removed. It then needs to be planed and refinished, and it needs to be inspected and tested to see if there's any kind of long-term effects. You know, you may not see inside the timber where it may be split, checked, or cracked, or whatever. And hardwood is normally quite difficult to work with at the best of times. Never mind something that's got a million holes peppered through it, maybe not twisted as a straight line, should I say, but it's usually a lot more hassle than what it's worth. I would, in that respect, if you have to use a hardwood, I'd go down the modified timber route. That's not treated timber, that's modified timber. So I'm talking about Kebony, Accoya, and Lignia. And we can elaborate on those later. But would I like to do a reclaimed? If it was going to look really rustic and an old style charming sort of boardwalk, and it was made out of very thick wide sections of oak, oh yeah, definitely reclaimed all the way. But I'd kind of run a mile from if you wanted to make reclaimed decking looked millimetre perfect, but so many designers do these days.
Fantastic. Kind of leading into that, somebody has commented that the public don't know about modified timbers but are aware of composites. They can only buy what is presented to them. Do you agree with that, and how do you think we can change that?
I think it's like any new product, Rachel. There needs to be. We've always kind of worked on the principle that there needs to be a demand before it comes to the mass market, if you like. So I think we'd like to probably see more people presenting these types of products at shows like FutureScape and other landscape shows around around the country, to bring it more into the landscaper's eye. I think they've always started off as being kind of traditional building products first, and then they kind of fall into the landscaping sector afterwards. But there is some fantastic innovations in modified wood, but I think the cost may be a bit of a barrier, if I'm honest.
I think
There
we
is a
touched
shortfall in supplying modified timber, if that's a thing, and if we were to just look at one particular type of modified timber that's generally supplied by Latham's, and it's called a coir. It's a scintillated timber, and it's warranted for 50 years off the ground, and it won't rot, and it doesn't need very much maintenance. And I've just done the calculation. It's 1,300 cubic meters that are imported into the UK every month. Now, it's a few percent that's used for decking. It's a few more single-digit percent for cladding. But to put that 1,300 cube into realistic terms, that's nearly 50,000 square meters of decking, x 6x1. That's quite a lot of product every single month, and the public don't really know about a coir. So just imagine the demand if the public did know about a coir, or indeed lignia or kebony. I can't say one without the other two.
Somebody has actually asked if the modified timber market is out of reach for the domestic customer price-wise.
Not a chance. It's the same price as cedar.
Chris, did you want to add anything to that?
No, all I was going to say is that composite decking was once, I think we touched on it before, regarding it was once very high end. It was the average person, should we say, couldn't buy composite decking. That's now become more mainstream, and these companies, I'm sure, will bring out these products the same as what we're all trying to innovate and change and evolve with the times. And we might all get involved in those type of products as things do evolve. Look at flat screen TVs. When they first come out, they were 10 grand a pop. Now they're £500, and you can pick them up in ridiculous sizes now that the average home is now got. It's just, things change, and the market will lead us into different ways, and us as manufacturers, we're always led by what our customers want, and if there's a demand there, I'm sure we'll all turn our hand to what's required.
Great. So someone else has asked, what are your recommendations for decking installation on roof terraces? Sorry, it's a bit noisy here. I'll say that again. What are your recommendations for decking installation on roof terraces given the new fire regulations?
Unfortunately, on roof terraces, there isn't really anything that says about what the standard of the decking should be. Unfortunately, that is a bit uncertain in the approved document B at the moment. So it would be good to have some clarity by the government on roof terraces. Certainly, we've had a few projects that have been done, but generally it is the sort of building control officer liaison with the fire officer on the project and determine its suitability, really.
Great. Someone else has asked, they have a curved design and they want to put in curved planters. Is this possible? And the planters are raised.
Yeah, I think all of our products are slightly different, but with our product Trex, it is possible to curve by applying heat gradually to the product to take it back to kind of more of a malleable way. I know the millboard, for instance, it might be a little bit more flexible if it's turned on its side, and you could do a similar sort of thing with that. All of those things are possible. It's a lot more work to get your framing right and get all those things kind of how you need it to be, but all of those things are available and possible.
Yeah, definitely agree with Lee there. It is basically the framework that you've got to get right, and then you clad it in the boards basically. So with our products, yes, you can curve it, so both from long ways, and then if you're up on end, curve around with our new cladding. So our new cladding the tongue is being made and the groove being made, so you can get a nice curve onto it. So you can get a nice curve onto sort of planters or whatever sort of design you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah, we have done some curved decks, not to the amount the Treks obviously advertise, more so than what we do. We've done it. It's possible, and I think it's as simple as that, really. It's possible. Everything's possible. It's down to the design and the framework, like we were talking about earlier with Karl and Lee in particular was saying about some of the decks that they've seen and been involved in. It's down to the framework, down to what's underneath it to hold some of these creative designs. That's where the clever work really comes, not only of the product and its ability to bend, but also underneath to secure it so it doesn't go back the other way.
Hey, someone else has asked, the big question they always get is, does it get slippery like timber decking in the long term?
Yeah, I had a client who had a deck recently fitted, and they slipped over a week ago, and they phoned me up and said, well, I've slipped over on my deck. And I said, yeah, it was frosty. She said, yeah, there was ice everywhere. And I went, you didn't slip over on your deck, you slipped over on the ice. So I put that to absolutely everybody. If it's wet, you're going to get wet feet. If it's hot, you're going to get hot. And if it's icy, you're going to fall on your ass. That's the bottom line. So whether it's a hardwood deck, a softwood, grooved or not, composite or any kind of surface outside, if it's icy, you're going to slip on it. However, I think most questions refer to, but what if I go on holiday for a year and or rent my house out and come back and it's very slippery? Well, that's actually down to the maintenance. You got to keep it clean. You keep it clean, you're not going to get moss and algae. You know, there's a whole chapter, line and verse, on how to maintain decks and where to put them and how not to construct them. But bottom line, keep it clean, won't be slipping.
We definitely have said the same thing. Sorry, Stefan. Said the same thing. A lot of people, it's like we touched on in the webinar. It's down to maintenance and people's perception of composite being like titanium, and it's completely untouchable. And all of a sudden they've spent a fortune on this deck that all the normal things like ice and water don't count. And we quite often get people say it's no maintenance. Well, nothing is no maintenance. It's low maintenance, and a general power wash in most people's houses will suffice in order to keep it looking you know, nice and slip resistant. It's just people's perception of the material, I think, again, is an understanding of it.
And
with millboard, I was just saying, the top surface of millboard is a polyurethane elastomer, which is the elastane layer, and that is similar to shoe soles. So it's a rubberized material, and so that is what provides it the slip resistance rather than the actual shape of the material, if that makes sense. So it's actually the material which over time, as we all know, rubber, and when you have rubber on rubber, it doesn't sort of lose its slippiness, it gets even grippier. So over time, millwood could become even more slip resistant, and that's even in the wet, because you've got the wet doesn't affect it as it does with sort of other products.
I think as a safety net for the clients, and something that should be the norm, is Cdm regulations. When a contractor has finished building a project, they're supposed to give clients a folio of what they've built, how they've built it, and what it's built of, and how to maintain it. It's a set of instructions on how to look after what they've bought, basically, and they should put in there, you need to maintain your decks, and it should also say what type of deck it is and how it needs to be maintained. And if they do that, they're then covered then by their warranty should somebody slip over.
Fantastic. Someone else has asked, which kind of leads from that a little bit. How important do the panel think it is to warn consumers of the risk of injury from hot deck surfaces, which is more evident in composites than wood?
I think it's a fair question. Obviously, Trex originates from America, where they have a lot hotter climate than we do. I think it just comes down. Karl touched on this just a minute ago. It's down to kind of common sense, really. If I'm on holiday in Tenerife and it's 40 degrees outside, if I don't put flip flops on, guess what? My feet are going to get hot. So when you walk on the pavement, it's no different. Lighter colours will not suffer it as much as the darker colours would. By nature of the trends at the moment within the UK, grey is the most popular colour, and we all do a version of grey, whether that be light, dark, whatever colour it will be. The darker colours will undoubtedly retain more heat, and care should be taken to kind of walk on it if it's a hot day. But I think it just comes back onto the common sense approach, really. Things get hot when it's hot. So.
And definitely agree with that. The different colours do make a big difference, with hot surfaces getting hotter, obviously. But the other thing with composites, especially millboard, is the heat is really just on the surface. So with timber, the heat is actually absorbed into the product, whereas with composites, so with millboard, the heat is on the surface. As soon as it's back in the shade, it cools down very quickly, and it doesn't. So when you stand on it, it doesn't absorb heat into your body. It doesn't keep sucking it from other surfaces like metal does, for instance.
Great, I think that's all the questions I can see. If anyone does have any other questions, you can visit exhibitors from 4 till 5, I think it is. And you can also message panelists if you have questions you want to give. Someone's just asked if Karl has hair under his hat. Potentially a question to answer now.
Doctors out there, if you want to give me a wig on, I'll build you a deck.
Good deal.
My teeth are okay, so that's no good for dentists.
Brilliant. Oh, thank you so much to everyone who tuned in, and thank you to our panelists again for taking part. I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of FutureScape today. Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.